Welcome into the Fight Night Podcast. This is Marc Davis.
And I'm Ben Rinsma. I'm going to be Marc's cohort here today.
So this is the very first episode of the Fight Night Podcast. We're very excited to be bringing this to you guys. And the reason we decided to do a podcast is because Ben and I are very much into sports. And we disagree on every point ever. We argue on players. We argue on coaches. We argue on teams. Never agree, and so we thought, why not bring these arguments and let other people listen in? So today, Ben's going to be telling you guys what we're up to.
Yeah, so our first love, of course, when it comes to sports is the National Football League, as it is for everybody else. And today we're going to be looking at the Vegas odds and their predictions for the 2018 season and for the win totals that they're predicting for these teams to have. So what's going to happen is Marc and I are both going to pick a team that we think is going to overperform and exceed expectations, and we're also going to pick a team that we think is going to be very, very disappointing in regards to what Vegas has them doing as far as winning games this year. So we're going to go with Marc first. Here's what's going to happen. Marc's going to bring you his two teams. One of them he thinks is going to be excellent, the other one not so great. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell him why he's full of it. So, Marc, if you want to go ahead and give us your first team here.
Yeah, so many of you guys probably know this. Some of you don't. Big Chicago Bears fan. And, I didn't want to be biased. I didn't want to pick my own team to exceed expectations. But I can't rest with the win total Vegas has. Most places have us between 5 and 6 wins, and that is embarrassingly low. I personally believe we will go 10 and 6 this year. And there's several reasons for this. So we're just going to go reason by reason. I'm going to say it, and then Ben's going to argue with me. First of all, Matt Nagy, okay? Brand new head coach. We kicked out how old was John Fox? Like 105? We kicked him. We fired him. We got him out of the building. Brought in Matt Nagy. We followed the Rams left us a beautiful template for what to do. You have a sophomore quarterback. You bring in a new offensive young head coach. And that's exactly what we did. And this is not to mention that Matt Nagy is a part of the Andy Reid coaching tree, which is ridiculous. And who just won the Super Bowl last year? The Eagles. You know who Doug Peterson started under? Andy Reid. Thank you very much.
I love Matt Nagy. I love his offensive mind. I love what he did with the Chiefs, with Tyreek Hill. And he's been in the news. He's been talking about, he wants to get Tariq Cohen the ball more. He wants to get Tariq Cohen out in the passing situations, use him like Tyreek Hill. He's just such a speed guy, such a weapon. Matt Nagy is not going to be on the football field winning them games. They don't have the personnel on the offensive side of the ball besides, I'll give you Howard, I'll give you Tariq Cohen. Who else is getting the ball? They can't run the ball every single play like they did last year.
Allen Robinson had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yeah. And now he's going to do it again.
Allen Robinson, first of all, hasn't played a game since week 1 of last season.
That's fair.
Hasn't played a game since week 1 of last season, so we don't know what Allen Robinson is after this injury.
He's a 6'4" wide receiver who's an absolute athletic freak, and is what he is.
Allen Robinson, when he produced in Jacksonville that year, he had Allen Hurns on the other side of the ball, who also had 1,000 yards.
Have you heard of Taylor Gabriel?
I have heard of Taylor Gabriel.
Anthony Miller out of Memphis?
Anthony Miller.
Goodness gracious.
Anthony Miller is a work in progress. We don't know what Anthony Miller is. Taylor Gabriel was fantastic when he had Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu taking up all the coverage for him. But this isn't Atlanta. Mitchell Trubisky is not Matt Ryan yet. Mitchell Trubisky ranked 27th last year in completion percentage. He is a great player. I think he has a lot of promise in this league. I like the comparisons to Jared Goff, but Jared Goff has Todd Gurley, Cooper Kupp. Jared Goff had an excellent offensive line after they signed Andrew Whitworth. I like the Bears. I like them to make a little comeback this year, but 10 wins is a lot for me, especially in that division. They've got some tough opponents in that division.
The division is tough, but I think another point that people forget about is our defense. So we have Akeem Hicks on the line, which Pro Football Focus rates as an elite player, should have made the Pro Bowl. Adrian Amos, which Bleacher Report ranked as one of the top 3 safeties last year. Roquan Smith coming in, Danny Trevathan coming in. Not coming in. He's our steady middle linebacker. Kyle Fuller at cornerback was an elite player last year in his last year of his rookie contract. I think if the defensive side of the ball can lock people up, I do think the division is a very tough problem because you look at the other quarterbacks, you have Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and that's tough to stop. But on that note, the division that the Bears get to play this year, is the AFC East. You know, each year an NFL team plays one division from the other conference, and the AFC East is absolute trash. Besides the Patriots, who will be one of our 6 losses, the Bills are very much figuring stuff out. The Dolphins are very much figuring stuff out. And the Jets are very much figuring stuff out. That very division much. It can't figure itself out. And so I think that's going to be 3 easy wins and a tough loss for us to swallow. But hey, the Patriots, you know, there's a lot of arguing going on there. Belichick canceled 2 days of practice. Maybe we can pick up a dub there.
We can talk about the AFC East. We can talk about the Dolphins and the Jets. We got to play the Patriots. You got to go to Seattle, okay?
Seattle's trash.
If we're talking
I can't wait to talk about Seattle.
We can get to Seattle later. I can't wait to roast your ass on Seattle. But we're going to talk about, we got the Seahawks, the Giants, and the Rams, who are all out of conference, not including the AFC East. So that is 4 tough games. I think the Giants are on the upswing this year, of course. And I don't see them... I don't see them coming out of those 4 games with a winning record. Those 4, they're not in order, but those 4 out-of-conference games. And if you're trying to tell me that they're going to win a game against every single one of their division opponents, I don't think I can sit here and honestly say, like, yes, that's going to happen. Like, they have a decent shot. Soldier Field's a good place to play. They can steal one. But, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is obviously, like, top 2 quarterback in the league, arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Matthew Stafford is a winner. And Kirk Cousins, the Vikings defense, almost went to the Super Bowl last year.
Is Matthew Stafford a winner? Doesn't he go like 9-7 pretty much every year?
Matthew Stafford is a playmaker. Matthew Stafford, if we want to talk about not having personnel, Matthew Stafford hasn't had anybody in Detroit for
I like Matthew Stafford, but the Lions are consistently right above average.
Matthew Stafford hasn't had a running game for 10 years. And the thing about Matthew Stafford is you put him in the fourth quarter, and he's going to make plays. He had, I think, 7 or 8 fourth-quarter comebacks last year. I don't know, just a tough division. I think the Bears are going to improve. How many wins they have last year? 5 wins. I could see them getting 7 wins. 10 wins is a little much for me in that division. I think that's tough.
One thing, though, that I do like about the offense is that we brought in... So, essentially what's happening is Matt Nagy is modeling the offense that he ran in Kansas City and bringing in similar personnel. Tyreek Hill and Taylor Gabriel are both very fast. Trey Burton mimics what Travis Kelce did. Allen Robinson is a very big presence on the outside that we can use. And Tariq Cohen is extremely versatile. I think he's going to have a big year next year. I think he's not going to be Alvin Kamara, but he will put up a portion of those numbers with the touches that he's going to get. I think that's very exciting.
For fantasy football purposes, I think Tariq Cohen is going to be a star, and I think he is very underrated in that aspect. I think as far as winning games, I think as far as, you know, moving the team down the field, I don't know if Taylor Gabriel is going to be enough across from Allen Robinson to get that passing game where it needs to be. I think they're going in the right direction. I think they're getting a lot of talent there. I like Roquan Smith. I like that draft pick. But I think they got a ways to go before they're getting 10. I mean, 10 wins, that's arguably a division title if they end up with a lucky season with the Lions and the Packers and all them. And that's a wild card. And the NFC is loaded. I mean, you got the NFC South that has 3 playoff teams.
The NFC South is ridiculous.
They've got 3 playoff teams. You got you're in the NFC North.
The NFC playoffs this year will be fascinating because there's about 3 teams in every. I mean, legitimately, I could see all 4 teams in the NFC North going, depending on how the offense and the coaching goes. Because you have Matt Patricia coming into the Lions, you have Matt Nagy coming into the Bears, Kirk Cousins, how he settles in with the Vikings, and then can Aaron Rodgers recover from injury, and can the Packers defense step up? Then you move to the NFC East, the Cowboys, the Eagles could all be presences.
The Redskins with Alex Smith. Alex Smith is going to shock a couple people, I think, in Washington.
And then you move to the South, you have the Panthers and Cam, Matt Ryan, you have Drew Brees. The Saints are almost a lock.
Yeah, so, I mean, just a lot of contention.
And the West. You have the 49ers and the Rams.
We got my Seahawks out there.
Seahawks aren't making anything this year, but good try.
I'm fascinated to watch the NFC playoffs. I just don't think the Bears are going to be a part of it. I'm sorry. So
all right,
we can go ahead and move on here.
You got the Broncos?
You want me to give you one? So the Broncos, the Denver Broncos, okay? Las Vegas has them coming in at 7 wins. Here's my problem.
Good for Vegas.
Here's my problem with that. I'm gonna start with Case Keenum. Case Keenum is a guy. He's been through it all. He's been cut. He's been a backup and a third-string quarterback. And this past season, he really came alive. And the thing about Case Keenum is, unlike the Broncos quarterbacks this past year, who to be fair to them, like they didn't have fantastic personnel around them. Case Keenum had much better receivers, much better running game, offensive line. But Case Keenum made plays when it mattered. And, I mean, we're just going to talk about the Minnesota Miracle. We're just going to ignore that. I mean, Case Keenum, Stephon Diggs made a great play. The guy whiffed on him. I mean, it's not a big whatever. But, like, Case Keenum is out there leading that team around. He's seen a lot of things in the league. I think Case Keenum, as compared to Paxton Lynch, Trevor Siemian, Brock Osweiler, Case Keenum is going to come in and give that team something they haven't had in a while, and that's leadership, and he's just comfortable when he's on the field. I also love, with Case Keenum, I think Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders are going to thrive. They have struggled under Trevor Siemian. They've been almost non-existent in fantasy this past couple years. Case Keenum is my first big point to throw at you.
Okay. Now, I like Case Keenum. Okay, I'm not going to hate on Case Keenum, but I'm going to present some other cases to you. Nick Foles comes in as a backup, ends up starting, ends up being really good. Signed to the Rams, signed to the Chiefs. Absolutely terrible. Matt Flynn comes in as a backup, ends up starting for the Packers. Signed to the Seahawks. Absolutely terrible. It's hard when you have a quarterback that has one good season.
Are we talking about NFL or Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles? Is that who we're talking about?
No, but you have to remember, after the first time he left Philadelphia and went to another team, it didn't end up going as well. And the coordinator for the Vikings last year was so good. And not to mention, the receivers in Denver are good, but they're getting old, and I fear that there's going to be injuries there. And they have no running game. They haven't had a running game for 10-plus years.
Not so fast. Royce Freeman out of Oregon is going to shock some people this year. He's unproven, that's correct. But he's got a burst, and John Elway is quoted as saying, Royce Freeman is a thumper. And I like the sound of that. Royce Freeman is what they want in Denver. Denver was, I believe, 8th in rush attempts last year. C.J. Anderson, played all right. And I think Royce is going to come in and give them some fresh legs, running the ball. I think those two receivers out wide with Case are going to figure it out. And the defense, Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, rushing after the quarterback. Getting after the quarterback is one of the most underrated, values that a defense could have. If you're getting after the quarterback nonstop, second and third down, that ruins teams' game plans.
I agree on the defense because, in my opinion, there's three things you have to do as an NFL GM. You have to have a quarterback. You have to get an O-line to protect the quarterback. Then you have to have a D-line to get their quarterback. And the Broncos have a quarterback. Their O-line is okay, and they have people to get after the passer, which is good. However, Vance Joseph, their head coach in his 1 year, was 5-11 and is unproven elsewhere. And I fear that him being able to meld together a rookie running back, a new quarterback, two old receivers as a defensive-minded coach might not fare so well. And just like you brought up the NFC North as a tough division, the AFC West is not something to be messed with. It is ridiculously stacked. You have the Chargers, Phillip Rivers. You have the Chiefs with, now Pat Mahomes. Is a question mark.
Mahomes, yep.
But you have the Raiders, too, now coming in with John Gruden. I think that division is going to be very tough to win in if you're the Broncos.
I think the Broncos, though, they stack up well against just about any one of those teams. You got Von Miller, Bradley Chubb getting after Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes has got one of the better arms that we've seen this past decade. But, I mean, he lost Matt Nagy. The Chiefs are very similar to what they were, but, I mean, that division, I would have them all about the same. I don't really know who's going to come out of the division. There's a lot of hype around the Chargers, a lot of hype around Melvin Gordon, Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers. They got Derwin James in the draft. They've got a nice young defense there with Bosa and Melvin Ingram. And I just, another thing I want to talk about is the culture in Denver. It's one of the toughest places to play in the league, Mile High. They were 4-3 at home last year. One of that losses was to Tom Brady and the Patriots, okay? The other two were 3-point losses. So they very realistically could have gone 6-1 at home last year. And
Did they have like a neutral site game?
no,
Why,
I don't think
why
so.
would they only have 7 home games?
You played? I'm not sure, honestly. I don't even know.
Did they do London or Mexico City? I don't know.
They didn't go to Mexico City. That was the Chiefs and Texans or something like that.
Huh.
But what I'm saying is, going back to Case Keenum. Case Keenum, I think, is going to provide stability in those close games, and that's something they haven't had. Trevor Siemian is just slightly below average. He's not going to go win you the division. He's not going to go into Kansas City and get you a win. I think Case Keenum has a little more poise, and I think they could win upwards of 10 or 11 games, and they can compete for that division, absolutely. If that defense is what people think it's going to be up front, I'm excited to see what they can do in Denver. So that's what I have. Mark, you have a...
Yeah. All right. I'm going to come in. I have my first disappointment here. So, my disappointment for the year, Seattle Seahawks. They're always projected to be good, and I'm going to give you several reasons why they're not going to be good. First of all, I think people aren't wanting to look at the fact that they're falling off a bit. They used to have the Legion of Boom. Pete Carroll was fresh. Russell Wilson was young. It was exciting. They were going to Super Bowls. They were winning division titles. And as it's gone on, Pete Carroll started to lose control. The offensive line is bad. No running game. Marshawn Lynch is gone. The Legion of Boom has quickly disseminated. So I want to quickly compare and contrast Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll. Okay, both all-time coaches, probably making Hall of Fames. I wouldn't be surprised. So Bill Belichick is very much not a player's coach. Players, for the most part, dislike playing for him. Gronk has talked about how he doesn't have fun in New England.
Cassius Marsh just came out. He just got cut by the Patriots recently. He posted that thing on Instagram. And
Yeah.
He's like, they don't have fun here. Like,
Yeah.
I don't enjoy my time in New England. Like that, and that speaks to the coaching. That speaks to the people at the top that are running the programs day to day, and that's the culture that Bill's built there. So.
And it's an absolute system where Bill sees any player as replaceable. I mean, I believe he tried to replace Tom Brady. I think he was trying to start Jimmy G, and that's why they moved him. And so, anyway, you see how Bill Belichick is such a system guy. And you look at Pete Carroll, who's very much a player's coach. And so he came into USC, they won a bunch of games, and then he started to lose control of the players because the players gained more power. And he left. He went to the Seahawks. He came in, he was a player's coach, he rallied everyone up. Same thing happened. He started losing control in the locker room. Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman both got moved this offseason because they started to try to control the locker room. And I believe that the coaching is going downhill to a point where Pete Carroll is going to be out of a job in 2 or 3 years.
My biggest thing is, so you have the Seahawks winning
five games. I don't see them winning games. I see them as absolute
just as we were talking
trash.
about Mile High, going to Seattle, the 12th man is not going to. They're not going to have that, Mark. They're not going to let you say that. 5
is
wins.
The 12th man another O lineman?
The 12th,
Because that's what they need more than a good crowd.
The 12th man is going to deafen just about every offensive lineman that any other team comes in there with their screaming and their. I mean, the 12th man is ridiculous. That atmosphere. Russell Wilson. Let me get to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson could have won the MVP last year. Russell Wilson accounts for such an absurdly high percentage of their touches and their yards and their touchdowns. And he did that all by himself. Last year, they lost all kinds of defensive players to injury. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Cliff Averill. They had an abysmal offensive line. Just absolutely terrible. And what was their record? They went 9-7. And they almost made the playoffs with that abysmal offensive line, with their arguably, I would say 3 out of their 5 best defensive players. You could say Bobby Wagner. You could say Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas got hurt too. They were just shattered, and they didn't have a running game. That's correct. That was an absolute mess. I had Eddie Lacy last year in fantasy, and he was just absolute dog.
How much does he weigh? Like 400 pounds?
Oh, I think he's up.
A big boy.
He's up to 450. He is a hog. But
a hog that can't run or get through an offensive line.
He can't find the hole. I don't know. I mean, I watched him play football. You know, some people just we don't have to get into that. But they had a tough time at running back last year. Everybody's making noise about Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny had over 2,000 scrimmage yards his senior year at San Diego State. He scored a heck of a lot of touchdowns. I don't have that number, but guys like that, he's comparable to a Kareem Hunt. Just ridiculous production. Not the same kind of player, but production-wise, his senior year in college and throughout his whole career at San Diego State. Donnell Pumphrey had all these kinds of records. He's on the Eagles now. All these kinds of records at San Diego State, and Rashad Penny just came in and smashed them like the year after.
And what's his name? Deshaun Pumphrey?
Donnell Pumphrey.
What does he do now?
He's a running back for the Eagles.
Oh, like a fourth string or something?
Yeah, he's probably third or fourth.
Oh, okay,
yeah. Cool. I'm just talking about the production he had in college.
No, I agree.
And I think, the one thing I would say about the Seahawks is they have done nothing to fix their offensive line. But when they did sign Brandon Marshall, they do have a couple of young people coming in on defense. Nobody knows what it's Shaquem Griffin. Nobody knows what Shaquem Griffin is going to do. I keep wanting to say Shaquille. I've talked about Shaquille a lot, but Shaquem, nobody knows what he's going to be. But, I mean, he is an impact player. If he is what they think he's going to be, he could really get after the quarterback and be a nuisance on that side of the ball. And when you just look at last year and what Russell Wilson was dealing with, and you got a healthy Russell Wilson coming in this year. He's a little more motivated. He's probably a little likes his offensive line. He's had time to get away from them and not be so pissed at them now.
If you want to name one quarterback that definitely doesn't give his O-line Rolexes at the end of the year, it's Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. The offensive line is not getting gives them anything from Russell, dude. But yeah, the thing is, the terrible personnel and situation that they had last year in that division with the Rams, the way they were playing, I guess you could say the Cardinals and 49ers were certainly below average. No David Johnson on the Cardinals.
Well, that's the problem, too, is I think they're going to be able to win less division games. And I want to differentiate my hate for the Seahawks and how bad they're going to do with Russell Wilson. Because in my opinion, any game that the Seahawks win this year will be Russell Wilson hoisting the team up. He is legitimately the LeBron James of football.
Absolutely.
And people do not recognize it because – again, the Seahawks go 9-7, and they go, "Oh, that's not impressive." But when you look at the adversity in the locker room, the coaching, the O-line, the running game, he absolutely puts it on his back and somehow just manages to go out and win them games. And so I personally have the Seahawks at 5-11 this year. I think all 5 games are going to be Russell Wilson going for 350 passing yards, 100 rush yards, and 3 touchdowns.
I think it's hard to imagine them losing less than 9 games when they've added Brandon Marshall, they've added Rashad Penny, and they've had another year to get that offensive line a little more figured out. They didn't draft anyone significant to fix it, but I have a tough time seeing them performing that poorly, especially with somebody like Russell Wilson at quarterback. So that's what I would have to say about that. So we're going to stick with the NFC West here. So my disappointment. So Las Vegas, those kind people at Las Vegas, have the San Francisco 49ers, and much of you probably agree with this, have the San Francisco 49ers winning 9 games next year. God, what did they win last year? No, actually, Jimmy G, they won 6 last year.
Games.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say about this. First of all, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's a darling. Everybody, they're super pumped about him, but teams have had more time to figure out Jimmy Garoppolo. They've had more time to watch film. They've had more time to analyze the offense. Kyle Shanahan is a brilliant offensive coordinator, and I'm really excited with what he might bring to the table with somebody like Jimmy, especially after what we saw last year. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a little less surprising to the teams that have to face him. Second of all, huge lack on the defensive side of the ball. They signed Richard Sherman, who's kind of getting up there. He is not the best corner in the league anymore. He used to be, but he's not anymore.
Don't test him, Michael Crabtree.
I wouldn't test.
He's still
him.
got that attitude.
I love the attitude. I love the attitude, but when there's people like Jalen Ramsey out there. He's not what he used to be. I want to talk about the pass rush. They had 30 sacks last year, which is tied for 26th in the league. Their best look at pass rusher is probably like DeForest Buckner, maybe. That's probably their upside at the pass rush position. And if you've got somebody like Jared Goff or Russell Wilson back there, or maybe even Josh Rosen, Sam Bradford, if they can figure it out, and you're not touching
Don't forget
him.
Mike Glennon.
If you're not if you're not getting after Russell Wilson, he's gonna pick you apart. And I have a big problem with that. They haven't done anything this offseason to fix that. It's a relatively tough division with good teams and tough places to play. And the last thing I want to say is I want to talk about Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was given a lot of money this year to come in and be their kind of workhorse running back. And the thing about Jerick McKinnon is he has below average efficiency with the ball in his hands. He's averaging like 3.2 yards a carry. It was only because of his massive load and amount of touches in Minnesota that his numbers were so high. I don't know if Jerick McKinnon is the answer there at running back, and honestly, I think they had it a little better off with Carlos Hyde. I'm not even sure what they did there. But I don't know if Jerick McKinnon and Jimmy Garoppolo can carry that offense to 9 wins when they have to play Jared Goff twice a year. They have to go to Seattle and see Russell Wilson twice a year. They only have to go to Seattle once. But and then, I mean, I think 9's a lot. I think 9's a lot to ask out of Jimmy. Jimmy was phenomenal last year at the end of last year, but I think that's because most people didn't know what he was. And when Jimmy Garoppolo stepped on the field and started whizzing the ball around and completing passes and getting all kinds of first downs, people were like, well, hey, like we weren't expecting this. And then it just kind of took them by surprise, and they got some wins at the end of the year. But I don't know if 9 wins is such a guarantee. I have them more around, I'd say 6 or 7 wins max, honestly.
And I agree. The 49ers are such an interesting case because they were 1-9 without Jimmy G, and then, 1-10, and he came in and won their last 5 games for them. Now, why it's tough is because obviously their offense was not good. Their defense was not good because they were losing at the rate that would have gotten them the first overall pick. But you can make the argument that Jimmy Garoppolo is similar to Russell Wilson, except imagine if Russell Wilson had been groomed under Tom Brady for 3 years. It's really ridiculous what he can do.
Mobile,
and he's still new into the game and young. But this is what I think. This is where I kind of agree with you. Is it's tough to see whether this next year. Okay, so you look at Dak Prescott, right? He comes into the NFL. Nobody can figure out his game. He goes on to win 13 games with the Dallas Cowboys. Then this year they kind of have a setback year. His sophomore year was tough. It's kind of, people are starting to figure him out. Exactly.
Zeke getting suspended every other week.
So it's interesting to see, will Jimmy Garoppolo keep up this insane winning streak?
Well, I mean, there's no way he can.
Right.
He's going to regress at some point.
But does he find a really tough year this year, a tough patch, as people have 5 full games of film? Or does he continue being he's shown himself being great in the games that he's had. So does he continue that?
I mean, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is obviously their one bright spot. And so, he's, their hope to, win 9 games, maybe sneak it, try and get a wild card or something like that. But I think that's a lot to put on one person, especially after all he did for them last year. To ask him to say, hey, just go out there, keep winning games for us. But, I mean, he was exceptional. He got a win against the Jaguars last year, who were just absurd on the defensive side of the ball. And Jimmy came in and hung, I think, 30-plus on him. It was a lot. But, yeah, I think 9 is just we're reaching there for the 49ers.
Now, we are done with the 4 teams, but I want to bring up one more topic because you mentioned Carlos Hyde. Mm-hmm. I think the Browns are very interesting this year because Duke Johnson is a great pass-catching back. Carlos Hyde is a bruiser on the ground. They have Josh Gordon, who, if Josh Gordon could ever play 16 games, might have 3,000 receiving yards because he is a freak. Not to mention they bring in Jarvis Landry. Tyrod Taylor.
It's like a top 6 receiver in the NFL. Jarvis Landry is exceptional in the slot.
Exactly. Tyrod Taylor was a playoff quarterback last year, and they bring in Baker. The defense has been, pretty abysmal in the past, but they keep bringing in pieces, Myles Garrett, people like that. Their secondary is poised to be good. How many wins do you think the Browns are going to get?
Oh, they can't get that many. The Cleveland Browns, but I'll tell you what I do love about the Browns and what they're doing. I think Hugh Jackson gets a lot of crap, and I think he's going to start to turn this team around with all his personnel. They've got so many new faces. Tyrod Taylor's there. Tyrod Taylor is just a solid quarterback. He's proven that he can win games and get his team to the playoffs. The Bills have gone to the playoffs, I think, the past 2 years. I am really, as are a lot of people, I'm sure, very, very excited about Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield, all of his off the field with the cop running and, with just the stuff at the Kansas game with the fans. And I think Baker Mayfield has the attitude, and I think he has the work ethic to win in this league. Whether or not it's going to be with the Cleveland Browns, I don't know. But I think Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor have, at this point, I mean, what else can you ask Cleveland to bring in for you? Like Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, Carlos Hyde. You got
a
two
stacked team.
great
If
receivers
those
and a starting
three-
running back sitting right there for you with young talent behind them.
If you transferred, say, the offensive pieces that Cleveland has to, say, Denver, people would be like, oh, Denver might be 12-4. But I think that the label that the Browns have is so negative. People laugh when you look at their roster, but it's shaping up. I think they could see 5-6 wins.
I could see them winning. I could see them winning 5 games. I think they could always steal one on somebody like Cincinnati, who is just kind of a lot of questions,
abysmal.
lot of question marks in Cincinnati these days.
Sorry, Alex.
Yeah. Shout out to Prescott. And I mean, just those AFC North games are always grinded out games. You could always steal one like playing Baltimore or Cincinnati. Or,
I mean, the Bears beat the Steelers last year. There's always those fluke
anything
games
could happen. The Pittsburgh
anything
Steelers. I mean, they're not going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I could see them getting 5 wins. But I would probably lean more towards like 3.
One more thing I want to bring up in the NFC North. There was recently an interview with John Harbaugh where he is considering AFC North. Great catch.
No problem.
You are a receiver, right? So catching's kind of your deal.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, so anyway, John Harbaugh was saying he wants to try a 2-quarterback system, which I find fascinating because, okay, first of all,
I think that's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ludicrous. So Joe Flacco does not like the fact that they brought in Lamar Miller. He refused to text him after the draft. And RG3.
too.
He refused to text him. He's getting old. He was once, debatably in the elite conversation. People were having that conversation. And now he
had a fantastic playoff run.
Exactly. And now he's kind of done. He's kind of not that great anymore. Lamar Miller is extremely exciting. What did I say?
I said Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller is not
goodness.
extremely exciting.
Lamar Miller is one of the most boring players ever. Sorry, Lamar Jackson.
Very little upside with Lamar Miller at all, anywhere.
We'll see how many things wrong I can say in this segment. So the NFC North and Lamar Miller. Lamar Jackson is exciting. And the fact that John Harbaugh is just even bringing up the fact that he might see time as a second quarterback, I think makes Joe Flacco extremely upset. I think it throws confusion into the offense. And I don't understand how you're going to play another quarterback without making him a receiver. I think that John Harbaugh is going to think, let's put 2 quarterbacks on the field and throw the defense off. But he's really going to turn Lamar Jackson into a slot,
or like a scat back kind of guy.
Exactly, or like a
2 quarterbacks in the backfield. I mean, the problem with that is Joe Flacco. If you had 2 Lamar Jacksons, maybe.
But Joe Flacco can't.
But
do
Joe
the
Flacco
other half.
is a complete non-threat on the ground and catching passes. Like he's just not that kind of athlete. He's not a Lamar Jackson kind of guy. I could see Lamar Jackson lining up in the slot, getting some reverses, throwback passes, just because he's a threat to throw the ball.
He's so electric.
The defense has
quick.
to think about it. But I mean, all in all, I don't see Joe Flacco finishing the season as a starter. I don't think you can, because the second Joe Flacco starts playing poorly and the Ravens' offense isn't really turning around, they got Michael Crabtree. Alex Collins is drawing a lot of looks in OTAs this year. But I think Lamar Jackson he's just waiting. I mean, he's bound to just overtake him, I think, as soon as like week 8, week 9. I think they could be his team a lot sooner than people think. And I'm excited to see what he does with it. Honestly, I don't the 2 quarterback thing. He's just talking. I mean, they're of course they're gonna try everything they can to get the best players on the field at all times. And if Lamar Jackson wants to come in, run the option or take some wildcat, like obviously that's completely possible. But 2 quarterbacks in the backfield is a little ludicrous to me.
I agree. We'll end the show today on an agreement note. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope to see you later on this podcast, and thank you very much. You guys have a good one.
Thanks so much, guys.